What is going on, Panthers Nation? Carolina Dad here, embarking on my way to work. But there's Panthers news that we've got to get out and we've got to talk about. So I said, you know what? I will record while I'm driving into work and try to give you as much information as possible for what has transpired over the last day. Yesterday, the Panthers completed 3 interviews. One of them snuck under the radar, so we knew about Dave Canales, offensive coordinator of the Bucks. We knew about Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. One that snuck in there was Bobby Slowick. So it was never confirmed, at least from all the reports that I read, and I follow all the national media, I follow the local media. No one had this interview pegged. And a lot of times they'll come out and say, so-and-so is scheduled to interview with the Panthers on this day or this team. And it never popped for Slowick. And the funny thing about this is if you go back and listen to Bobby Slowick earlier in the week addressing the thought of being interviewed for, as a head coaching candidate and things like that, he basically was like, well, my head's down. We're focused on the Ravens. I'm not really worried about that. And then kind of low-key sneaks in here and does an interview. So I don't know how to read that. Part of me, when I was watching him talk through this process, I was like, it kind of seems like a guy who may not be ready to make the jump. But then he comes in and completes the interview. I've seen quite a few people that are like, well, all these coaches, when you have 10 people or 12 candidates, whatever it is, interviewing, that like, are they just using us for practice? And I don't think so. I don't think that we are being used to prepare them for whoever else is, they're interviewing with. I mean, I think it is good to get as much practice as you can, but I think every coach that is coming in here is interviewing to be the head coach of this team. So that leads us into today, Friday. We have Ben Johnson, and I should say we have the 2 Johnsons, Brian Johnson and Ben Johnson, that remain. Ben Johnson has been confirmed for today. At least that's what all the outlets are saying. So we'll wait to see as that comes through. Following that up, Brian Johnson, who is the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, has not been confirmed. It would not surprise me if he goes today, even though, we never got confirmation, or maybe at some point later this week. Now, he can go whenever, since the Eagles are eliminated out of the playoffs. Where we're about to get into a bottleneck with this entire situation is after the divisional round, teams that are still in the playoffs. So if you look at our coaching candidates, we've got Lions and Bucks. So, Ben Johnson, Dave Canales. One of those guys is going to move on. And whenever whoever wins moves on, we cannot interview them until they are officially eliminated from the playoffs. So starting the 22nd, if they're still in, we cannot interview them until after the conference championship game has occurred. So something to keep in the back of your mind as you think through, how quickly are we going to be able to move? And then on the flip side, you've got Tampa Bay and Houston. This is what I get for doing this. You got Baltimore and Houston. And then there, I got it right this time. Baltimore and Houston. And of course, we know Bobby Slowick, Mike McDonald, Todd Monken. So the winner of that game also, although, Ravens feels a little bit, as far as like their coaching candidates, I'd say Mike McDonald's probably the leader out of that group. Saying out of, him and Todd Monken, could be surprised. But you've got that happening as well. But it's not just the Panthers that are affected, because all the other teams that are looking to get their coach will likely also have someone else in the playoffs. So it's something to keep in the back of your mind as teams are starting to try and move through. And you're like, why have we not hired a coach? And if you remember last year, Frank Wright had already been fired. So at that point, he's not in the playoffs, and they changed the interview process a little bit this year for coaches that are still on a team. So we'll watch that, and as always, I'm going to keep y'all updated with everything that I hear and see, and we'll do an official, announcement with the next round of coaches that are moving to the next round, I should say. And I don't know the ebb and flow of the GM search. That's been a little bit quieter compared to coaching, and so I would think in most, in past situations, you would want to get the GM in here first, but the NFL has changed. Coaches have way more power than they used to, and are in more control of the roster and things like that, or at least contributing to the roster and their input. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers secure a head coach before the GM, and I think we'll be okay either way. I think the bigger question is the model that we're going to run with the GM that I've talked about. Are we getting in 2 people? Are we getting in 1 person? We really need some talent evaluators that can help us build through the draft. Now, if you had a chance to listen to Adam Peters talk at his introductory presser for the Washington Commanders, the thing that I really loved about him talking was his idea of building through the draft. And it's something that I think as a casual fan before this year and even now, I've always felt like free agency is the way to go. You got to get your guys through free agency. And part of that is true, but there's also this fundamental of building through the draft, making sure that you're drafting the right guys that can help you sustain, and you're hitting on those late round picks. But it's just a different philosophy than thinking about, well, we got to go out, we got to get this guy, pay them a ton of money to be competitive. You want those to supplement the draft picks that you are developing and the guys that you're pulling in. I went back and looked at receivers this past year. Rookie wide receivers, 9 out of the top, I think it was 55 or 56, it might have been 53. Top 50-ish, 9 out of the top 50-ish receivers and tight ends in receiving yards were rookies. So that's, I'm not going to name the list. That shows you the impact. And that's not, primarily talking about Puka either. There's a bunch of guys, the Zay Flowers, the Addisons, again, and I said I wasn't going to name people. Laporta, Kincaid, I'm still dropping names. So I think about that pick at pick 33, and what I would love, and I know we're kind of now moving into mock draft talk and just continuing to ramble, I'd love for the Panthers to be able to, if possible, just move back maybe 2 or 3 spots, still get a receiver, but get an additional pick that's pretty high value, and then maybe get an offensive lineman. If we can do that in the 2nd or 3rd round, taking that 1 pick and then and moving back, and then start going through just best available player, and see if we can knock it out of the park. Anyways, folks, that's all I got. Y'all have a great one. See ya.